to LDM Radio Sports Talk, the sports show the show that talks about sports and other topics relatable to sports fans. Joining me this week in Pennsylvania is Scott Blander.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
All right, feeling fantastic. Very, very exciting week in sports that just happened. So we're gonna start off with what most of us either want to talk about or don't want to talk about is the AL wildcard game that happened on Tuesday night with the New York Yankees, local New York Yankees, visiting the Boston Red Sox for their 20th matchup of the season, and the Red Sox ended up winning 6-2 to advance to the series versus the Tampa Bay Rays, which starts actually tonight. So, Scott, what were your thoughts on the game, and how happy are you right now?
I was actually not going to mention that. I was going to go strictly professional, strictly objective. But since you brought it up, yeah, I was very, very happy about that. Not a big Yankee fan. That being said, a lot of things went wrong for the Yankees in that game. Bullpen, they only got 2 runs, etc. But you got to pin the blame squarely on Garrett Cole. You know, here's a guy who signed here 9 years, $324 million, $36 million a year to be their ace. Now, granted, the salary doesn't really mean anything because the Yankees are a bottomless bank account and a non-salary cap league. But you command that kind of money, you sign that kind of contract. You know, you're not coming to the Yankees to win 20 games. You're not coming to the Yankees to win a Cy Young. You're coming to the Yankees for that game, a 1-game playoff game against your arch rival and nemesis. You cannot get 2 innings and get pulled and just not have it. Like, you literally signed that contract for that game. You have to do better than that. That is completely unacceptable. And it was only 3 runs, not the end of the world if the bats woke up. But, you know, when your ace gets pulled like that, you know, it's gotta, I know these guys are professional baseball players and all, but, you know, there is psychology there, and that had to take a toll. And you know, from that point on, down 3-0 with their ace out of the game and relying on the bullpen, you know, I'm sure these guys it was a different mentality. You know, with you know, for him coming there with that kind of money, you got to get 6 innings out of him. You know, 2 runs, maybe 3. Completely unacceptable. I put the blame squarely on Garrett Cole there. Definitely dropped the ball.
Well, it's funny in this day and age where 6 innings is good enough because, you know, if you look at it from, you know, the beginning of time, the beginning of baseball time, all the way up until the 90s, you know, like everybody wanted to just pitch 9 innings. Like, it was a failure if you didn't pitch an inning. So, you know, to put it in the context of today's game, which is how it rolls with the deep bullpens and pretty much, you know, everybody in your 90% of your or 95% of your been coming in and shooting 100-mile-an-hour fastballs. Pretty much, I think it's weird. It's sad that the Garrett Cole situation happened that way, and you're absolutely right. When it comes to when you get the big ticket and you get the big money, with all that comes the big pressure, and that these are the situations where you have to step up and you have to be what they are paying you for. And you're absolutely right. They didn't pay him to win 20 games. They didn't pay him to win a Cy Young. It's all about, you know, having championships and pitching zeros at this point. But, you know, at the timing of it, I think, you know, Aaron Boone is kind of just very analytical with his moves, and I don't know. I think you got to ride him out a little bit, especially. You know, there was a game this season where they left Andrew Heaney in for it was the Field of Dreams game where he had given up 5 runs and they still kept him in there, and then he ended up giving up 7 total before they ended up yanking him. You know, so it's not consistent. It's something that the Yankees are going to have to look at. A lot of the Yankee fans are clamoring for Aaron Boone to be replaced, which at this point it doesn't seem like a far-fetched idea, just from the standpoint of, you know, like, you got to get these guys going. You know, that it seems like they have the talent on the roster. They should be able to perform more. You know, that the only guy who ends up doing anything in the past 2 Octobers, even though it's been a short sample size, is Giancarlo Stanton. He's the one who, he's one of the top 15 paid players in baseball, and he consistently comes up in the big moments in October. Unfortunately, he's the only one that ends up coming up, so it's not able to be deep runs. But I'd like to see what he can do in 15 games in October. Like what they need deeper runs, and this is an absolute disappointment. There's no doubt about it. There's no big enough excuse. There's really nothing to mask it at this point.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for what you said about Boone, and I know that you guys hate the guy. Well, I mean, as a manager, and yeah, there is something to be said for did he make the right decision pulling him? Because maybe he settles in. I mean, 3 runs is not the end of the world. At the end, turned out it would have been enough, but who knows? If I think he had like first and second, nobody out when they pulled him. If he's able to get out of that, that could be something to rally behind. Like, all right, we're down 3. I mean, much bigger deficits have been overcome in the postseason, and especially that early in the game. So, he took a risk. He thought maybe we could salvage it, but you got first and second, nobody out, regardless of who you have on the mound. So maybe you stick it. It's very easy for us to sit here and be Monday morning quarterback and all, but this is your best pitcher. Maybe you let him see if he can get out of it. And Boone said he didn't want the game to get out of hand, and the replacement obviously did get out of it, but analytics have turned baseball into basically a chess match.
Yeah.
Whereas, like you said, in the 80s and 90s, you don't take a guy out after 2 innings in the postseason, especially your first or second starter, unless he gives up 5, 6, 7 easily, not 2. So yeah, there's definitely some blame to go for Aaron Boone there, but it doesn't change the fact that your $36 million a year man just didn't show up in the one game of the year that he's supposed to. So yeah, there's a lot of blame to go around, definitely.
Yeah, if you look at what technically in this day and age, what is a technical quality start for a starting pitcher is 6 innings and 3 runs. So at that point, it was still in play, and you have to go with it's a feeling out process, and I'm sure that in the back of Garrett Cole's mind, he probably knew that the hook was going to come quick if he wasn't super perfect, and that can have an impact too. So, I mean, it seems like there were a lot of times during this season where Aaron Boone would come out to lift him, and he wasn't super happy about it, to the point of, frustration. He held it together. It wasn't anything like a super big episode that ended up, taking over the news, but a situation, it seems like there's a disconnect there, and who knows how many other disconnects he has on that roster, and why they're not able to perform. But as far as a Yankee fan goes, and you're watching them throughout the whole season, the writing was on the wall. It didn't, there's only so far you can get with a bunch of 200, 210, 220 hitters, and like only having like 1 or 2 guys that are consistently producing. You have DJ LeMahieu at the top of the lineup, who was nowhere near as good as he was last year, which ended up in the shortened season and earning the contract for himself. So there's also the situation there. But Giancarlo Stanton had 3 hits, and the rest of the Yankee team had 3 hits, and there's been plenty of times this season where they've scored more than 6 runs. So the blame goes around for everyone, but at the end of the day, there's heads got to roll when this kind of disappointment happens, and there's it seemed like years past there were like super catastrophic injuries that the Yankees overcame, and there was a couple of years ago where it looked like Brian Cashman was going to get the general manager of the year because every move that he seemed to pull seemed to be the right one up until the end result not ending in a World Series, and then that's where we are now. But they're declining instead of inclining. It seemed like they're like from the baby bombers. When Aaron Judge came up, and Gary Sanchez a little bit before him. So and all this like infusion of young talent, a top end talent. It looked like, and like they ended up getting to within a one win of a World Series. They went 3-2 to Houston, only needing one win to get to the World Series, and that's how close they got. And now they're not even sniffing, not even getting close to actual series and long playoffs, and it's bad. And this is something that the Yankees have to take a look at. And to go on top of your point as far as the top dollar, the Yankees actually they've the past couple of seasons they've been operating under the threshold, which I believe is 187 million before you get like the luxury tax, and you get like double taxed after for every dollar after you pass the 187 million. It's like teams like the Dodgers. Like the Dodgers are the new Yankees from the 90s and the most of the 2000s, where like they were just spending $200 million on payroll every year. And the Yankees, they're like eighth maybe or ninth as far as overall payroll goes. So they're this is not the same old Yankee team that just buys everybody that they can in order to win. Because if that was the situation, then they would have probably been bigger players for Max Scherzer at the deadline, and how much would that have helped? And just different situations like that. It's not the same old Yankee team. They try to work within the budget, which is very scary too. To add on to your point that they did pay Garrett Cole so much, and they do pay Giancarlo Stanton that much, and they ended up giving a larger contract to DJ LeMahieu, and there's going to be other guys that are due for raises now. Like those baby bombers are growing up, so it's going to be interesting to see how they end up handling their business going forward.
Yeah. When I said, the bottomless bank account, yes, I know that the overall salary is not what it was in the late 90s, early 2000s. I was just making the point that it doesn't really matter what they're paying Garrett Cole. Like in a salary cap league, hockey, football, whatever, you pay a guy, you use 15-20% of your salary cap on one guy. You expect if that guy does not light it up, then you're all sorts of screwed. So here, it's not like it was a waste of money. I mean, yeah, that's arguable, I guess. But I'm saying they could continue even with that contract. They can continue to sign whoever they would. It's not like they're that salary means anything to how much they could spend if they wanted to. That's the point I was making there. Yes, they have surprisingly they have taken their foot off the gas a little bit on overall salary. Did make them somewhat likable a few years ago. Not for me, but for other people.
Absolutely, I think it's going to be interesting to see, because deeper playoff runs pretty much covers the larger luxury tax number because of attendance and merchandise and everything else that goes with getting to the ALCS and then getting through to the World Series, and then ultimately if you win the World Series, obviously that's the best part, because you have the packed houses the whole time. You're selling all types of food and beverage, and there's just so much profit to be made from a deep playoff run. So how long does it take for the New York Yankees to continue operating on a budget when they're not able to even get to a deep October? It was October 4th. It's unacceptable, and it's a situation where they put themselves in a position to have a bright future, and right now they are declining into that future, that is the biggest problem of them all. I've said in past shows that the crosstown New York Mets, they're basically on the rise right now. They are on, like in the middle of the pack now. They were pretty much at the bottom for the past couple of years, but they are ascending forward at least. But the Yankees are actually declining, which is the scariest part. So there has to be some fixes within the machine itself. They can't keep operating as a homer, walk, or strikeout team. It's not working. It's enough is enough already. You got to get some ball movers. You got to get some people that can slap a single the other way to keep runners on the base pads. People that can steal. People that could bunt. There's almost nobody on the roster other than maybe like a Brent Gardner who bunts. You know, it's just that there's so much situational baseball that gets lost with this New York Yankees roster, and they're not able to scratch out enough runs. I think from last week's show we had it was the race between the Red Sox and the Yankees and the Toronto Blue Jays and the Seattle Mariners for the last wild card spot, which the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox ended up claiming, with the Red Sox being number one, and that's why the game was at the wild card game was at Fenway Park. But we talk about the Toronto Blue Jays. The Toronto Blue Jays had like over 160 run differential. As far as runs that they scored compared to runs that they gave up. So it was just pretty. It's poor timing of I guess when they scored the runs, because you're basically losing 4-3, but then you're winning like 12-2. But in these situations, like that offense is October ready, and unfortunately they didn't have the pitching to back it up. But very easily if the Toronto Blue Jays were in that position, they would have been able, I think, to get past this game and move forward, possibly beat the Rays. So it's just it's a very, very complex situation on where they go from here and how much are they willing to do. And but you look at it from the perspective of who their last boss was, like the last owner was George Steinbrenner before Hal and Hank ended up taking over. But now they operate differently. But if George Steinbrenner was in there, they would be heads would be rolling already. Like they wouldn't even have waited, the past couple of days, and let's see what happens with Aaron Boone. Like he would have been gone already. Yeah, you just know that, and it seems like I see a lot of the George Steinbrenner in Steve Cohen and the Mets. Seems like he's one of those like no nonsense, like give me what I need or get the hell out kind of guy. So it'd be interesting to see how that the New York Mets progress moving forward as well.
Yeah. We've talked about that. Obviously, they already cut ties with Rojas managers. That had to happen. The rest of the pitching staff, rest of the coaching staff gone. So I like the Mets are wasting no time there. And when you were talking about Cashman, I was looking up his stats. He's been there since '98, so he's responsible for I don't know if he gets credit for the '98 team, but at least 3 World Series titles. So he kind of, that's a legacy there that he gets a pass, but that's only going to go so far. And I think he's past that. I think he no longer gets the pass of those previous titles. And because I remember, you were talking about, the Yankees just rely on the home run. I remember in the 2018 series that a full 5-game series, the Yankees, they would just came into their own after, a few down years. The use the term baby bombers, those, Judge, those guys. And it looked like, they were ready to go. They played the Red Sox and they were strictly a home run. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they set a record for home runs that year. I know that was, Aaron Judge's big year. So, they were crushing the ball. And they ran into a Red Sox team that played small ball that, could have 2 outs, nobody on, and get a run out of it. Not by a home run, meaning, a couple base hits, stolen base, whatever, knew how to manufacture runs. So, and they beat the Yankees 3-1. So that was a problem 3 years ago. And here you are 3 years later, a more big name free agents, big money, big name free agents later, and they still haven't solved the problem. So having said that, then yeah, you absolutely, in addition to Boone, you absolutely have to put Cashman on the hot seat now. This was a problem 3 years ago. It was exposed by the Red Sox, and here you are 3 years later. Nothing has changed, and it happened again. So yeah, Cashman absolutely has to be on the hot seat, and he can no longer play the late '90s, early 2000s World Series cards as justification for not putting a world beater on the team now on the field.
Oh yeah, they are. I think we're way past really anything that could be said. They just flat out weren't good enough. They just flat out could not get it done. and with the talent on the roster, even even looking at it, that there's absolutely no reason why they should have only scored two in a game, a decisive one game playoff. There's no reason why, no logistical good reason why Garrett Cole didn't last longer in that game. There has to be changes. Like what they have, the group that they have now, and who's leading the group is not working, and eventually they're gonna have to sort that out. If the Yankees aren't gonna make them, they're either gonna stick with Boone at this point, or who they have their eyes on is still playing or still managing right now to the point that they wouldn't even be able to talk to him anyway. So maybe they're just hanging on to him. But I'll be very, very surprised if Aaron Boone is the manager of the New York Yankees next season. For no other reason, just because it seems like he just lost a team. He's just not it's not effective, and sometimes you need a new voice in there. Sometimes you need a a change of the operation in order to get more out of the players, and it's just whatever system they have now, whatever they've been working on and building up toward. They're not building toward anything right now. They are in a decline, and that is the scariest part on how the future goes and how they'll be able to move forward. All right,
Yeah, there's always something to be said. There's always argument of how important is the manager, the coach, or whatnot. And I think baseball more than any other sport, hockey, football, basketball. I think baseball it's probably the least important because they have, especially in the American League, and I mentioned that before. Basically, Aaron Boone's only job is to figure out when the pitcher's tired and take him out. Yeah. You don't have to worry about the double switches with the pitcher coming up the bat, things like that. So there is something to be said for the players just didn't get it done. And you could say that to some extent, the whole argument, these are grown men, these are $1 million professional athletes, they're in the spotlight, they have to perform. Yeah, there's something to be said for that. But like you just mentioned, there's also something to be said for, a coach that can motivate. Different sport, obviously, but, we just went through that for 5-6 years with back-to-back Rangers coaches, AV and David Quinn. Neither of them could light a fire under the team. Now, I'm not to spend too much time on that because we'll get to that later. But, and I think you're right. I think Aaron Boone has lost this team. So, yeah, there's on one hand, these are multi-million-dollar, 8-figure, salary professional athletes, the 0.0001% best of what they do in the world. They should be able to, get a base hit, get a double, let up less than 2 runs in 6 innings in that stage, sure. But, no matter what level it is, there is something to be said for a coach that can motivate, a coach that has the respect of his players, no matter how much these guys make. And, clearly these guys are underperforming in big stages. There's definitely something to be said for, did he lose that locker room? And it appears that he has.
Yeah, it's a bunch of information that we don't know and we'll never know. Everything's just speculation from what we're discussing now. But, this is what happens when you lose. Like, when you're winning, if you could have like a spackle of dysfunctionality, but as long as you're winning, like nobody really cares. It's all about just the end result and moving forward and, just getting the best out of everybody. So, unfortunately, this is the way it turned out. And it's very, very short October run for the New York Yankees, which which I've always said for the past couple weeks. I think the 2 biggest disappointments in the MLB this season is the San Diego Padres, who ended up finishing with a losing record. They finished with a 79 and 83 record when they were picked to be, one of the 2 top powerhouses in the West. They were supposed to be duking it out with the Los Angeles Dodgers in the way that the San Francisco Giants ended up duking it out with them, which we'll get to in a second. But and then the second biggest disappointment was the New York Yankees. They were supposed to be, they should have been fighting with the Rays for first place in that last series instead of basically backing into the playoffs and then becoming the road team in the wild card, which everybody knows, the home field is important, and your home the home dimensions of the Yankee Stadium more caters more toward their lineup than at Fenway Park, and they end up coming up short when they needed to come up big, and it's just they were supposed to be closer to the World Series than not even making it close to it, which is what they ended up finishing with. So I'd say those are the two biggest disappointments in the MLB season. And
Yeah,
now it's official. Before it was speculation as far as, well, let's see what the Yankees are gonna do going down to like when they actually get into the playoffs and see how much damage they can make. Now that it's all said and done and the bookends are complete, then we can say now they are this pretty much arguably the first, but definitely one of the top two biggest disappointments of this MLB season.
yeah, and I think on some level you kind of knew it was coming because at last series, those last three games, were more or less playoff games in themselves. They were playing Tampa, who was, who was far and away the best team in that division. They proved it. They definitely a title contender. They proved that. So you need to win those games just to make the playoffs. And they lost the first two. And, Toronto and Boston both won, and Boston snatched home field advantage from them in that game. Whether or not that would have made a difference, who knows? But they had, Yankee Stadium and Fenway Park, both are, insanely loud, crazy places, especially in the playoffs in October. And by, not getting it done in that last series. They won the third game, and it was enough to get them in the playoffs, but they lost home field by losing those first two and put themselves in that position to have to win that last game of the season just to get in the playoffs. And that was close, and they got it done. But, just losing those first two games and losing that home field advantage to the Red Sox, probably it definitely was at the time. You thought maybe it was a precursor to how this playoff game is going to go, and it turned out that it was, because they dropped it. They didn't get it done in that 3-game series to finish the season, and they continued that momentum or lack thereof in that 1-game playoff. So yeah.
Absolutely. Last week we mentioned that at this point last week, Thursday of before this week that whole weekend series even started, the Rays had everything locked up. They had the number one locked up. They had the division locked up. There was nothing more to gain from contending with the Yankees other than to knock them out, and they successfully did. In hindsight, we look at the way all the dominoes fell, and now they face a Red Sox team where they know they could beat them. Even if they do get a little hot. I don't see that series going the distance at all. I think the Rays are going to wipe them, to the point where the Red Sox probably just get one game and that's about it. And then they're going to move on to the next series. So mission accomplished for the Tampa Bay Rays for sure.
Yeah, they got to be loving life. Like you said, they had everything locked up. They didn't need to win any of those games. Now, it's baseball is not really the same as when a team is in that kind of situation in like football or hockey where you rest your starters going into the playoffs. Baseball's not as nowhere near as demanding of a sport physically, so the Rays said, no, we're going to play spoilers. We don't have a chance to really stick it to the Yankees here.
Yeah, I think some teams take that approach. Maybe they'll play like their players half the game. It all depends on the managers, the field of the team, situation. You don't want them to lose the rhythm or anything. But the Rays went all out. They were just they were just like they were the ones that needed to get into the playoffs. Were basically how they ended up approaching that series, and they ended up getting what they needed from that series because now the Yankees are out, and they get a bit of arguably a softer Red Sox lineup who doesn't have, it's pretty much a notch down from pitching, and they really had to scramble for the bullpen. So it'll be interesting to see how long that series goes, but I'm going to say the Rays are definitely going to take the Red Sox at some point. So the other series, which is going on as we speak right now, is the Houston Astros going up against the Chicago White Sox. Who do you see coming out of that one?
don't know. I'm not all that familiar with those teams this particular year. I mean, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. We talked about the Astros and how they really have recovered from the whole cheating thing, unless they came up with a new and much better way to do it. Who knows? But I'm looking at the records: 95 and 67 for the Astros, 93 and 69 for the White Sox. So they're dead even. The Astros happen to have a much better home record than the White Sox. So, they're 51 and 30 at home. The White Sox 40 and 41. They're actually under 500. They won 93 games, and they're actually under 500 on the road. So based on that, I like this thing going 5. I think Game 5 is a toss-up. My prediction, I like each team winning their home games and going 5, and then Game 5 is a toss-up. It just appears like the Astros are completely dominated at home. That's also a very loud place in the playoffs. And the White Sox apparently not very good on the road. So right now it's 3-0 Astros, bottom of the 4th. So Game 1 is following suit. Yeah, I like this thing going the distance. But I'm not going to, take the PC, easy answer and say the Astros will win it in 5. I think it's anybody's game in Game 5, but I do see it going the distance.
Yeah, see, this is your classic experienced roster going up against the young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, kind of happy to be here roster of the Chicago White Sox. Not very much playoff experience up and down the lineup. Very young, very raw talent. I'm going to say that the Astros end up taking this one just because they've been there before and their 3 and 4 hitters actually hit in the playoffs, even home or road, when they're banging trash cans or not. They last year proved that they could still perform. So I'd say that the Astros end up taking the White Sox at this point. But we'll see how that unfolds. Most likely it'll be done by this time next week. So we'll have an answer on that. But I'm going to definitely go with the Astros and then say that the Rays versus the Astros will be the ALCS. Which is a scary thought because there's really there's as being a Yankee fan, there's really nothing to root for at that point because it's just like, versus.
Yeah, I was going to say, so if it's Astros, Red Sox, two teams who back-to-back knocked the Yankees out, two teams who back-to-back blatantly cheated, that I know that, obviously you hate the Red Sox that forever. That's the rivalry there, but Astros not high on the Yankee fans'
Absolutely.
list right now either. So if it's an Astros Red Sox ALCS, who do you root for? I'm going to assume Astros because the Red Sox are the Red Sox, but who do you root for there?
It would just be just as bad. I don't know. I just can't root. I just root for whoever comes out of the NL at that point. The White Sox are for Yankee fans and just me personally. Like the White Sox are my only hope in having any kind of happiness coming out of the American League at all. So we'll take a look at the National League real quick. So think about being the San Francisco Giants right now. So, you surprise the league, you end up getting 105 wins. Like you're head and shoulders above everybody as far as win-loss record. Looks like you're just absolutely steamrolling teams. And you won a division against and this is where the bad luck comes in because the second person in the second team in the division is the Los Angeles Dodgers, who are the defending champions and also were just as studly as you were in the regular season. So, it went down to the wire. There was really no breaks or, it basically went down to the last day of the season on who was going to get the wild card game or who was going to host the wild card game and who was going to host the whole divisional series. So Giants ended up taking the number 1 slot in all of baseball. So if they make it to the World Series, they will have the home field advantage over anybody who comes out of the American League. But you get your first round series against the Los Angeles Dodgers, another team, the only other team that has the second best record in the league. So the number 1 and the number 2 are facing off in the divisional series, which is really weird as far as the baseball goes. I compare it to, a couple of years ago when the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Washington Capitals in the NHL were 1 and 2 all the time, but then they'd end up facing each other in the second round because of the way the divisional alignments and playoff brackets went in the NHL. And now you have that scenario here where you have arguably the two best teams in a 5-game series.
You read my mind. I'm not even joking. I was literally going to bring up the Penguins and Capitals thing. That there, I mean, when you have divisions, you have divisions. I get that because every year, whatever sport, you got one division that's weaker than the rest. Obviously, the Braves winning the division with 88 wins. Football, the NL East has been ridiculous for years now. 8-8, 9-7, 10-6, winning the division. And getting a home playoff. Okay, so you're gonna have divisions, but yeah, I agree. The 1 and 2 teams in each conference or league, if you want, whatever you're calling it here, should definitely be playing in the as late as possible. You got the 1 and 2 team. You got 106 wins and 107 wins. That's insane for two teams in the same division to have those kind of records, and it's a travesty, really. You've got a ridiculous rivalry there in Dodgers and Giants, great in-state rivalry. And B, just, how great these teams are. There's no reason that Giants shouldn't be playing the Braves and the Dodgers should be playing the Brewers and let them go in the I was going to say conference finals, but the league championship series, definitely. Yeah, hockey dropped the ball on that. Hockey used to be 1 through 8. They redid the divisions a few years ago, and put more emphasis on division rather than conference. And it was a mistake because, like you said, the Penguins and Capitals 1 and 2, Crosby, Ovechkin, and they did it specifically for that reason. They wanted to make sure by putting more emphasis on the divisions and having the first 2 rounds interdivisional, they wanted to make sure that they could get the rivalries in the teams playing in the playoffs. Penguins versus Caps, Rangers Devils, Rangers Islanders, Boston Montreal, things like that. But you're taking away from the integrity of the game by doing that. By basically you're saying we care more about money and ratings than the integrity of the game. Now I understand these are billion-dollar industries. They've transcended sports with how much money is involved in professional sports. I understand that, but you are taking away from the integrity. And some of the players have had something to say about that. I remember, I think Crosby and Ovechkin both had something to say about that it's not fair that they were playing in the second round rather than the third. And they're doing it again here. You got, Dodgers and Giants. Like I said, the records alone, the rivalry. This is a series that every baseball fan will be watching, and it's going to make the winner of this versus a slightly above average team in the league championship series. They're going to go from phenomenal ratings to probably the ratings are going to take a hit in the league championship series because you're going to have a team really. You're knocking out one of your juggernauts, and basically the winner, Braves Brewers, is pretty much getting a bye, to elimination. So they definitely dropped the ball with how they did the seedings in baseball this year.
I think these are situations that, as far because these kind of decisions when it comes to playoff brackets and these are situations that go through a ton of people, and there's a bunch of decision makers. I'm sure there's a lot of votes and a lot of executive kind of like lunches and meetings and things to make these and a lot of scenarios play each other out. This is probably just the worst case scenario that happened. I would assume this is the first year that's been this bad since they came out with this new format. Me personally, I think they should have kept their 1 through 8 format and kind of just followed through with the rest of the leagues. You have the NFL who expanded. They have 7 teams now, with only 1 team having a bye in each division. So, in baseball you only got 5, but you really just have 4 because there's only 1 game that decides that. But we'll just look at it from so you have 5 in each league, and you have 30 teams. I mean, it's just. I don't think it's fair. I think last year was amazing the way they did the 1 through 8, and I think that's the way they should have did it this year. Because even if you look at it, everybody the 1 through 8 in the American League, everybody had a winning record. In the NL, just the 8th team was the aforementioned San Diego Padres. They were the only ones that had a losing record, but it was close enough, kind of the 500, which is 2 games down, and I think it would have been more interesting. I think it would have been more fair, and I think you would have had more teams with opportunities. And somebody who the Toronto Blue Jays, who just narrowly missed a 5-team playoff, that you would have gave them a fighting chance. Especially with the fact that Seattle, Toronto, who we mentioned, New York, and Boston, they all would have won the NL East if they were in the NL East, but they're in the AL East. So it's just, it's a lot of good luck and bad luck when it comes to sports and divisions, and there's really not a great. Like there's never going to be like 100% science to it, but there should be some kind of fighting chance, and people having to earn their way moving forward. And like, you get your unsung Cinderella stories, which everybody loves, even people who don't follow sports that much. They love a good Cinderella story, and that kind of grips them into it. So it's for baseball's decision makers to make a little further on down the line. But I would have liked for them to, especially out of all the goofy COVID gimmick stuff that they kept, like the 7-inning doubleheader and the runner starts on second base, all these crazy COVID things that they ended up keeping. They didn't keep the one thing that actually made the most sense and would have helped them the most profitability wise, with having so many teams in the playoffs and merchandise and an extra either one home game or a bunch of home games, but you have packed houses, and just something for them to think about in the future, and see if they actually do go down that road and just follow what every other sports is doing. At least having, like, it's 16 for the hockey, 16 for basketball, and 14 for the NHL. So they could definitely use some more postseason teams in there.
Yeah, and the playoffs are forever expanding. I mean, I'm a child of the '80s. I remember, two divisions in each, two in the American, two in the National. No wild card. It was just division winners. 7-game, championship series, 7-game World Series. Obviously, you needed more playoff teams. 162 games is a lot to have one team come out of your division in the playoffs. But I do like division format. You gotta have. I do like a 1 through 8 seeding, but I do like the division winner, even if it's in a crappy division, getting respect for winning the division. I mean, look, things change. One division is going to be great one year. One division is, going to be terrible next year. I talked about the NL East. I'm sorry, the NFC East. In football being terrible this year for a few years now. I remember growing up in the 80s where, between the Dallas Giants and the Redskins, believe it or not, the Redskins were a powerhouse in the 80s. It was hands down the best division of football. So everything comes full circle. So I do like having divisions, and the Giants are a perfect example, because I remember in 2011, the second, fourth, but the second Super Bowl over New England, the Giants won a 9-7. They wanted to be 9-7 back in the day would probably not even get you a wild card, and the Giants still today probably 9-7 very rarely gets a wild card if you don't win the division. Giants won a ridiculous division at 9-7. I remember they played Atlanta in the first round, and Atlanta had a 10-6 record. And Atlanta, I remember the coach. Somebody was saying, "I can't believe the Giants have home field advantage," and the Giants beat them 27-2. So you want to be the better team. You think you're the better team, you deserve home field advantage. Maybe you don't lose 27-2. So and then of course the Giants went on with that 9-7 record to win the Super Bowl again. So I do like the division format, because it does set up that Cinderella team that I love a Cinderella as well, like you said. So some divisions are going to be stronger than others. That's just the way it is, and things change. One division is great and terrible one year, and a couple years later things change. So I do like keeping the division format, but I like hockey reseeds the playoffs, and I like doing that, because if you want to give a team who won a terrible division a little bit of a boost and a little bit of a love for winning that reward. That's the word. A reward for winning that division in the first round, absolutely. But then it should stop there. Now you got to go with who earned it after strictly on records after the first round, and hockey and baseball, they're being exposed for doing it wrong here in the last few years, and hopefully this changes, moving forward.
Well, let's think about this scenario here, where we have, um, a, where we have baseball. Let's say if they adopt the the NFL's playoff format, right? So you have the first team gets a bye. So the season ends on Sunday. Then we won't see them until Friday when they start their second round series. And then you have the other six teams going, 2 through 6, and or the rest of the order. Two to seven, 3 to 5, and then the way the math works out there. So you have the top versus the bottom, and then the division winners end up getting their home games, which will be the winners of the other three divisions, if they do make that, or just make it the best records, however way it works out. Then just for theoretical situations, so then you end up having a 3-game series, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, if Thursday is even needed for some teams, and then whoever wins, those series end up moving on to the next round, and then the weakest team goes up against the team who had the bye, who has 5 days off. Well, actually 4 days off, because they played on Sunday, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday they're off, and then they play Friday against whoever the other opponent is, and then the other team ends up, the other two teams end up matching up later on. It's a plausible idea that can happen if they end up choosing to do that, and I think what you're adding 4 playoff teams, you're adding 4 merchandise opportunities with hats and T-shirts, and we all know fans that just jump on that stuff as soon as it comes out and things like that. So, and then you have the home games, you have the the extra, I'd say extra attendance toward the end of the season, because instead of a team being out, they're in and they're fighting for playoff positioning and things like that. So you have more fans that are going to go more down to the wire than they normally would have. And I just think it just makes more sense to expand the playoff brackets. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a Yankee fan. They got knocked out the first game. I've been saying this for a while ago. The past couple of shows and different things like that. I just think I'm very avid on the fact that they should expand the playoffs, and they should give more teams, because it brings more revenue to the bottom line.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think a 1-game playoff. No, that's weak.
No, the 1-game playoff. That's the system they have now. I'm saying that if the 2 through 7 teams end up having 3-game series with each other, that's the way last year. Last year was 1 through 8. Everybody had 3-game series against each other. Whoever wins went to the next round. So you're basically having a 3-game series, and then you just make every other series 7-game series, or you could keep it 3 and then 5 and then 7 and then 7. However way it works out, I think that it's the best way to go about it.
The 1-game playoff this year for the 2 wild cards, was that COVID related, or is that the current system moving forward?
It's the current system they had before COVID.
Okay.
So they added the second wild card team a couple of years ago, where it was just not the outright wild card winner. They had some wild card game. I think it was maybe 2017, 2018, around there. And this year's what that was before COVID. But then last year they had the 1 through 8, and they had it was 3-game playoffs for everybody, and whoever came out of it, and then they moved on with the rest of it. And I think
that's a better system. I don't like a 1-game, a playoff, 1-game playoff. That's kind of ridiculous. You're either in the playoffs or you're not. There's buys, and they have some of the better teams didn't have to play in that. But 162 games, you either make the playoffs or you don't. And if you're gonna have a 1-game playoff for teams that make the playoffs, it almost feels like they're not. Like had the Yankees lost that last game, and tied with Toronto, the Yankees and Toronto would have played a 1-game playoff to get into a 1-game playoff. That's kind of ridiculous. The one game I like the one game playoff, game number 163 to decide who gets into the playoffs. I love that.
I love that too.
But you shouldn't have the next round of the playoff. The playoffs are playoffs. They're playoffs or you're not.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the Yankees and Red Sox should have been 3 games, best of 3, if not 5. I mean, there's nothing wrong with shortening the season back to 154 games and adding another best of 5 series. I mean, like you said, money's in the playoffs.
Yeah.
TV, the price of tickets, the money is definitely in the playoffs. So, the baseball was 154 games for decades, and I don't remember exactly when it became 162, but I remember there was big implications with the with the McGuire Sosa Maris thing, because Maris did 51 in 154 games. So I remember that was a huge deal back in '98. But they could always go back to 154, cut the last 2 weeks off of the season, and make it that for playoffs. Why would you not? There's more money in it. There's more excitement in it. And I don't like the one game playoff as playoffs. Nah, you work too hard and put too much into the season for your season to come down to one game. If you're either in the playoffs or you're not.
It works.